Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. In today's review, we'll be revisiting the Hamilton Khaki King 2 Automatic. Now, before we jump into the review, I do want to do a quick history check of where the Hamilton Khaki King 2 gets its DNA from. Although this is not a historical design from Hamilton with the Hamilton Khaki King 2, it's evident that this watch gets its inspiration and design from the Hamilton Khaki Field that were initially born from the military-issued A12s from the early 1940s. I wouldn't consider this a field watch as much as I would consider it a field-style watch. And I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. Although you have a lot of the elements of a field watch, you are missing a lot of key features with this Hamilton Khaki King 2 that would define this as a true field watch, such as the screw-down crown that's going to protect the movement from the elements, a simplistic dial. You need to be able to read the dial on a field watch on a dime, and I believe that this Hamilton Khaki King 2 just has an extremely busy dial with the date complication that disrupts the 24-hour markers. That was a quick history breakdown for the Hamilton Khaki King 2. Now we can move forward and unpack the specs on this handsome timepiece. You have a 40mm case size, 11mm thick, 49mm lug to lug. For the case material, it is an industry standard 316L stainless steel. For the bracelet, you have a stainless steel bracelet. The crystal is a sapphire crystal with no AR coating. You have a water resistant of 50 meters. And as for the movement housed in this watch, you have the caliber H40, which is a modified version of the ETA 28342. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the video and how that's going to be one of the highlights of this watch. Let's go ahead and punch in with this camera and get a top down of the watch. And give you a better look at this timepiece. I would have preferred to have seen this watch at 37 to 38 millimeters on the case size, and then subduing the lugs a bit. I think that the Hamilton Khaki Field is also plagued by these extremely long lugs. I think that 49 millimeters is a bit of a gap for the size of this watch, and it makes this watch wear a lot larger on the wrist than it should. Let's talk a little bit about the finish with this case. So taking a look at that top polished bezel, I think this is where the finish kind of falls apart a bit. It's not finished to a high degree, and when you think of that Swiss-made badge and the Hamilton brand as a whole, you think of quality, and I think that in terms of that polish, they could have done a better job. Now, it's not all bad here, because when you take a look at the brush finish on this case, they did a fantastic job. The top side has a really good linear brush finish that's pretty consistent throughout the entire case. Taking a closer look at this dial here, Hamilton did a really good job with this textured dial. You have these printed Arabic numerals. You have the printed Hamilton logo with the text at the bottom. It's all done to a very high degree. Only gripe I have with this dial is I would have preferred to have seen the date at a different part of the watch and not right underneath where the 12 should be. I don't know, it just kind of throws the dial symmetry off for me. Now, I know we talked about the lugs being oversized on this watch, but I think Hamilton did a very good job at bringing it back. So they tapered off these lugs in a very aggressive manner. And then also the end links. So they made these female end links to avoid the watch from over protruding and allowing it to wear on the wrist. Extremely nice, and you do get this very nice hugging effect of this watch on the wrist, and I'll show you a little bit later on as well a wrist shot so you can see what I'm talking about. As for the clasp with this bracelet, nothing special. You have a dual push button deployment butterfly clasp here. It's solid. It's nothing to go crazy about, because I do still feel that they could have done a better job with this bracelet overall. Taking a look here at the welcome inclusion of a sapphire crystal. There is no AR coating, evident in the amount of glare that can at times affect the legibility of this dial. To help with the legibility in the dark, Hamilton has included lume in the Arabic numerals, hour, minute, and second hand, and lume pits at every hour marker. Needless to say, this watch is not going to be winning any lume wars anytime soon, as it left a lot to be desired in that category. Alright, let's talk about the highlight of this watch, and that is the caliber H40 movement. That is a modified version of the ETA 28342 movement. They slowed down the beat frequency from 28,800 beats per hour to 21,600 beats per hour, 3 Hz, extending that power reserve to 80 hours. They've also did a modification to the balance assembly. They upgraded that with a more efficient balance assembly that absorbs impact, hence improving the accuracy of the watch. Now, this movement does help with the thinness of this watch. Even though you have the day-date complication, you have the automatic works, it's still able to maintain that thinness of this watch, keeping it down to that 11 millimeters, which helps with the wearing experience here. Talking about wearing experience, this bracelet measures in at 20 millimeters up at the case, tapers down to 18 millimeters, and back up to 19 millimeters at the clasp. I know I talked about the clasp, but I want to touch a little bit more on those push buttons as they protrude out a little more than I prefer. They do work as expected and still have a certain degree of satisfactory push to them. I wouldn't dwell too much on that as they did more than make up with the milled hardware. Does a fantastic job at keeping the watch secure to your wrist, and even gone as far as providing you with 2 micro adjustments, which is definitely a welcome addition. Here we can see the watch on the wrist, and that very thin profile does allow this watch to sit low to the wrist, allowing for overall pleasant experience and compensating for those overextended lugs. Here's one of the instances where the sapphire crystal takes away from the watch instead of elevating. The legibility of the dial is impaired by the amount of glare that you get with this sapphire crystal that has no AR coating, and I think that defeats the purpose of having a watch to be able to tell time and enjoy that process. And on that note, I have to say that Hamilton dropped the ball drastically, and that is further emphasized when you get in a scene that you can actually admire the precise printing of the text, numerals, and outer track. Begs the question why Hamilton wouldn't add AR coating to this crystal to allow it to be legible in all scenarios, especially when going for a field design with this watch. As I stated earlier, I have to consider this watch a field style watch rather than a field watch. Now, that's not a bad thing, but if you truly want a field watch, then I would recommend the Hamilton Khaki Field Auto 38mm, as that watch is going to have the set of specs that categorize it as a true field watch. It's going to come with the updated H10 caliber, 38mm case size, 10mm thin, and 47mm lug to lug, and offer 100 meters of water resistant. Now be prepared, because on a bracelet, this one will run you about $80 more. Okay, now that we're on that topic, let's discuss the price on the Hamilton Khaki King 2. On Amazon, you can find this watch for about $470 or $30 cheaper on a leather strap. Or the quartz variant, if you're open to that, for about $375. You're going to get a drastic increase in accuracy and save $100 in the process. Now that we have covered offering options and pricing, the only thing left for me to do is to conclude if this is a recommendable watch. I think this is most definitely a viable option in that Swiss-made category. Now, that's not putting aside companies like Tissot that have very compelling options. In fact, if not the most compelling options in the Swiss-made category, with the Gentleman and PRX and PRS lineup, just to name a few. Considering this lineup, you're going to be looking at a subtle increase in price, nothing too crazy, still within that same realm of the Hamilton lineups. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that sums up my review on the Hamilton Khaki King 2. Now, I had done a review for this in the past, a few months back. It just wasn't as good quality and or in depth as this video was, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did like this format, please drop it in the comments below. Drop a like, and if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Let's go ahead and get this channel to 1,000 subscribers. Thank you. Until the next one.